Well, in our reading, there was a word which came twice, and I wonder whether you can tell me what it was. A very important word, which is the theme of this sermon anyway, and maybe others as well. Authority. Well done. Thank you, Sarah. Authority. Jesus was said to have authority as he taught them, amazing authority. And he just commanded this evil spirit, be quiet, come out of him, in a very authoritative manner. So much authority that people were amazed and astonished. Well, that's what I should be talking about a little bit later on. But before that, if you're looking for authority, you are looking for authenticity. You're looking for eyewitness accounts of things. And Shakil Malik, who worships with us, most of you know him now very well, the director of the Sussex Partnership NHS Trust for Mental Health, and the man at the background of the Loaf Project, raising funds to buy minibuses for a special school in Pakistan for children with profound learning difficulties. Shakil wanted to have a word this morning about his experiences going back to Pakistan recently and the persecution of Christians in Pakistan, which is a subject which we did raise some while ago in a morning service. But he is an eyewitness and speaks with the authority of an eyewitness. I can just read things out of a magazine about this life of Christians in Pakistan, but he can tell it as it is. So Shakil, would you like to come and take the floor?
Good morning. As always, an absolute pleasure to be here, and particularly today to talk about or show you two different aspects of reality in Pakistan. And if you would remember, a few weeks ago we had Father Simon here from Pakistan, who is perhaps the only, I would say, this is a country of 200 million people, not many leaders in the Christian community, of which there are about 15 million. So he's one of the very few. And I happen to witness what he does, where he lives, and what he goes through day in and day out. But I'm going to show you some pictures, and they will speak for themselves. This is Christmas. This is the church. You can see the barbed wires and the high walls. These are people from various intelligence and military and civilian agencies that are out to protect the man. Not just him, the people who come to worship in the church. This is over Christmas. So this is outside the 100 yards that his living quarters and the church, and this is how he was protected to be taken, because he's on the hit list. This is outside. This is his living quarters behind. These are the people with all the arms and ammunition. These are snipers on top of buildings. This is all happening on Christmas Day. This is himself surrounded by, you name it, any and every agency that is involved in protection. But these people you're relying on, because who knows, any one of them can turn around. And I tell you a story which is of the late governor of the province of Punjab. He had a soft corner for the Christian community, and there was this mentally handicapped young lady who was taken into prison for crime of blasphemy. She didn't know what she said or she didn't say, no one knows, but she was waiting in prison to be hanged. And as things go, this governor went and visited her in the prison and wanted to, sort of get her out. Now, he was assassinated by his own bodyguard. He was actually killed. And this is Father Simon with all the bodyguards and the people in uniform and this is the 100 yards that he has to travel between his living quarters and the church. This is the church, having said that. And I asked him, I said, what about people coming to church? And they said, well, they were overwhelming in the presence so it doesn't deter. And that is what he was saying, telling us here last time. If you remember, this is a church that is, people standing on the second floor and not even, more people than chairs and seating capacity. That's him there. And a fearless person who goes around, he is on the hit list. He's been asked by the government not to travel alone. He goes everywhere alone. He came to see me. He took me out. And I was worried for myself, or left aside, himself. He is a fearless person who has and he's been asked not to do these things, but he does whatever he has to. He looks after parishes that are over 30,000 in the most deprived part of the country, and he is responsible not just for the prayers and the worship, but also for all their social needs, their legal needs, their interpersonal problems, and all sorts of things that are associated with deprivation, severe social deprivation. Now, that is where the fear and the reality of the church and people who are trying to help. The interesting thing and the paradox is that the Christian schools in Pakistan have over 1 million children in their schools. They are not all Christian. They are from all denominations. Whether they are producing the right leadership, I leave it to my colleagues, the educationalists here, and what are we doing and they're doing about it. That's a big question mark, because it is a phenomenal resource which I think is not deployed to the right. They're not educating. They're not relating the story of love, or if I can say, they are not educating. They are perhaps making children literate, but not educating them. But this is such a powerful resource, and it lacks leadership, and that is what we've been trying to, some of colleagues here, trying to do, to establish the right leadership in the church, which can take over and do something about it. Otherwise, it's a spiral that's going down. Now, the second part of my story, or the story I have, is one of love. And that is, it started about 4 years ago, and I can see where it started from John Geeter's home, and he's there, and Roger, and Derek, and Richard, and Christine, and all. So we started this Center for Learning Disability called the Center for Profound Education, with no money, with no resources. I tell you, it is a miracle. Now, not because it's been now 4 or 5 years. You remember we wanted to buy transport and buy one vehicle, and Lord said, no, you get 2. So in the same, if you remember, we went out and we had enough money to buy 2 vehicles. Now this is for children who are severely compromised and challenging, and to the extent, and they're all from very poor backgrounds, and it's a story where poverty propagates poverty, and deprivation propagates deprivation, because the whole family revolves around a learning disabled child, and the learning disabled child also challenges, and the patience is stretched to a level where even the families, they cannot cope with, and they get into their own emotional, other psychological problems. So this is Island of Hope. And there are the 2 vehicles that you all have donated. That is Father Simon there, who came to bless the vehicles. And these are the backbone of the transport, because all the poor children could not access the school. They have to be brought, and they are all disabled. That is the school. And we've got 50 children, and as you can see, from all colors, creeds, religions, but also disability that ranges from, I can tell you some miracle stories here which are outside the, I can tell you of two young brothers, one 13-year-old, the other is 8, and about 6 months ago I got a video from the school saying that these children are so handicapped that they cannot stand up, and all they do is they lay on the floor and they go in circles on the floor. So Dr. Malik, you being a very big whatever, this, that, and the other, tell us what we do about them. I did not have a clue, and neither did my colleagues in Sussex Partnership or elsewhere. All we told them was just take care of them, buy some extra matting, be careful, they shouldn't hit their head on. Now, this time when I go, and I related this with, to John, those children were sitting and eating with forks and spoons. I've got their pictures, I passed them on to John. It is beyond any medical or scientific explanation. Another child, 7-year-old, the parents brought him, and he was so disturbed that he would clap, and that's all he would do 24/7. And that's what he was doing. And the family sometimes had to burn things and burn his hands so that just to prevent it. It was, you can see the cruelty, or maybe it's love that has gone that far with. And what I see this time, he is in uniform, he's sitting on a table and chair, and he's getting educated, like, still has handicap and all the rest, but no more clapping, shook hands, no scarred hands, no nothing. How does this happen? I leave it to yourself. So these are the children. That is the assembly going on. This is Father Simon there, and by the way, this is all hit list, because this is also targeted. This is, this young girl that you see is 22 years old, severely handicapped. This young man he was also crawling on the floor when we got him into school. Now, I've just been told that he can now stand on his feet, like, he can't walk, but he can certainly stand, and that's a great thing for him. Now, you can see something up there. It says Dr. Geeter room. So that is Dr. Geeter room, and those are the children that are in Dr. Geeter's room. And and with the teachers. So this is Dr. Geeter room, and the lovely children that are there. Profound thanks to Law of Sussex, to friends from the church and doctors from Sussex Partnership, who some of them have gone out on their own money, with their own time, and helped out and continue to do so. So I will end there. Thank you very much.
Well, I don't know quite how to follow that. The reading that I was given was not very helpful in integrating Shakil into the service this morning, but we are doing it, and you will see that we might at the end come back to a point which he has made. But let's move to the authority of Jesus. Incidentally, I wondered as I saw those pictures to see that church absolutely packed on Christmas Day, whether perhaps our answer to church growth would be to be persecuted. Whether that might be, somebody said years ago that the blood of the martyrs was the seed of the church, and I can't remember who it was, but I thought, for the writers of the synoptic gospels, that's Matthew, Mark and Luke, what strikes them, what seems to strike them most, particularly in Mark, which is an all-action gospel, which just moves from one event to the next, and the next day Jesus, and the next hour Jesus, and so on. And it just moves like an express train through the life of Jesus. what seems to come out of it is the belief in Jesus' authority, not only in this reading, but as it goes on through the gospel. He obviously was a man with huge personal charisma, who would walk into a room, I don't doubt, and people would stop talking and just note that he had come in, because he had that sort of strength of personality, undoubtedly. Indeed, the very big question, the biggest question which his opponents asked, because his opponents agreed that he had authority, as well as his followers. Both his opponents and his followers agreed that he had authority. They asked him in chapter 11 of Mark, and in the other Gospels as well, from where does your authority come? Why have you got the right to say and do these things in the way that you do? Where is it from? And his answer was, I'm not going to tell you. But here at the beginning of his ministry, in two sections, it says he had authority. He had extraordinary authority in the way that he preached and in the way that he dealt with, in this case, a man possessed by a demon. And so it goes on through this very fast-moving gospel. In chapter 2, he heals a paralyzed man who's come down from the roof. And the simple command, he says, son, your sins are forgiven. And everybody around says, well, only God can forgive sins, but Jesus has said it. Son, your sins have been forgiven. And then he says, get up, take up your bed and walk. Very authoritative, very assuming that what he says is going to happen. There's Richard there, and he stands in front of his children on a Monday morning. They assume, or he assumes, that what he says will happen, because he's a man with authority. So Jesus says it in this very authoritative manner. Just get up, take your bed and walk. And again, as we go on through the gospel, we find time and time again, in chapter 2, he claims authority on the behavior at the Sabbath. He goes through the cornfields with his disciples, and they pick some ears of corn, which is technically speaking, according to the Pharisees, work, and he rubs them in his hand, and it's on the Sabbath. And in reply he says, do you not know that the Son of Man has authority over the Sabbath? He is Lord of the Sabbath. In chapter 4, when he is woken by his terrified disciples in the storm on the sea, you remember, he got up and he simply said, quiet, be still. And the seas calmed down. In chapter 5, he brings a dead girl back to life with a command, but a much more gentle command. Come on, little one, get up. And she got up. And in chapter 6, he feeds 5,000 people and he walks on water. In chapter 7, he heals a deaf mute with a simple command, be opened, be opened. And so on. It goes on all through the gospel. In chapter 11, he even claims authority over the temple. He even says it's his. He says, quoting Isaiah, when he goes in and sees the people changing money and fleecing people, overcharging for sacrificial doves and so on and so forth, he says, my house will be called the house of prayer for all nations, adding, you've turned it into a den of thieves. So throughout his life, he is an authority figure, an authoritative person, by virtue of the way that he teaches, the way that he acts, the things that he does. And yet, this is the man who, in effect, put his head into a noose. This is the man who, as Isaiah prophesied, like a sheep before his shearers, is dumb. He accepts death on a cross. This is the authority of a man who puts his money where his mouth is. This very act of self-abasement, of self-sacrifice, of obedience to the will of the one he called Father, this is the act which, above all his other acts, authenticates his claim on our lives. It is that which gives him the right to ask us for our obedience and our submission to his authority. All the other things that he did are evidence, but the act which he did as he went to the cross like a lamb to the slaughter is what demands our obedience, what demands our submission. Love so amazing, so divine, demands my soul, my life, my all. So what does it mean to submit to him? In John's Gospel, the touchstone of our obedience to him is the word love, and this is where I come back to something that Shackle brought to us. If you love me, you will keep my commandments, said Jesus in John chapter 14, and again in chapter 15. My commandment is this: love one another as I have loved you. This is my command: love each other. So if that is his command, this is how we show our submission to him. Do we love one another? Do we love those around us? Do we love our community, the people we meet, those children in Pakistan? Do we love them? What does it mean to love? And here I just wish to go through a couple of verses from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, and I'm going to pause after each word which describes love. This is a passage which is so often read at weddings, but it has a far, far deeper implication and application. This is what Paul says about love, and as I say it, I'll pause after each one and think, am I being this to my friends? Am I being this to my people I don't particularly like? Am I being this to everybody else in this congregation? Am I being this to my family? Am I being this to my workmates? Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not boast. Love is not rude. Love is not self-seeking. Love is not easily angered. Love keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil. Love rejoices in truth. Love always protects. Love always trusts. Love always hopes. Love always perseveres. Love never fails. And to return to what Shackle was saying, the love shown to those children, those needy children that people attempted to cast off, the love shown to them is having its effect. So these are the ways in which our lives bear witness to our response to Jesus' authority, and within which our relationships will be healed and our personalities made whole.